All right, so our last session is going to be focused on ground-up development and construction, and there's going to be a lot of facets that we're going to talk about here. But before we begin with our questions, you all know Bob, but sitting to my two people over is President of Apogee Professional Services, Cassie Innes. And Cassie's been with our group for several years, and I think we started Apogee, Cassie, a couple of years ago now?
January of 2019.
January of 2019. It's a sister company of Metonics. We'll dive more into this during our Q&A, because really we want to spend the bulk of our time talking about construction here and some of the developments that we've developed and a signature product of ours. So as we get started, Cassie, I'm going to start with you. So for the last 9 months, we've heard about construction pricing inflation, and some of the people in this room have felt that as well. We've also been dealing with labor shortages during the pandemic. Can you speak to what you're seeing in the construction market and also what we're doing to solve some of these issues?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are very fortunate to have 2 ground-up developments under construction right now. We started them in April of this year, which was the absolute highest point of the lumber pricing. So we had a lot of anxiety at that time in starting these projects, but for reference, one of our projects is in Bellevue. It's a 3-story walk-up. We call it an apart-middle, 107 apartment homes, and on about 4.5 acres. We're really excited about this project. And then the other one is phase 2 of Ravello. So you guys have heard about Ravello at 192nd and Pacific, our apartminium product, and 68 more apartminiums that we're going to be putting to the north of the existing asset. So we're really excited about these 2 developments. Like I said, back in April, when we were getting contractor pricing, we had a lot of anxiety as our costs were up about 10% from about 6 months prior. So as we were looking at these projects and deciding, are we going to move forward? Can we move forward? We did some major value engineering exercises, and we also had some other project factors that went in our favor. For instance, the construction loan pricing that we got, the interest rates were at about a 3.25. We had originally underwritten much higher than that. As Bob mentioned in an earlier session, our lease-ups in Bellevue had gone exceptionally well. We leased up Latitude 41 about 8 months ahead of where we had originally planned. And rent pricing was increasing at that 3 to 5% clip. So we ended up moving forward with these projects, and we're happy we did. As of right now, we are seeing some supply chain issues. I know that there's some general contractors in the audience who can vouch for me here that there are definitely material supply chain issues, labor shortages, things like that. Excuse me. One thing that we've seen recently, so vinyl windows is what we put in our projects. We've seen about a 3 to 5% increase in our lead times. Normally they'd be 8 to 10 weeks for a vinyl window. Right now we're seeing 20 weeks in our lead time. So we've had to pivot, change manufacturers on our Bellevue project. We did have a little bit of a material increase hit with that. We've baked in some contingency to offset, some of these pricing increases, which has been helpful. Another thing that we're seeing is just generally, things are just taking longer to get. So flooring materials, asphalt shingles, concrete supply has been really hard to get. We ended up changing subcontractors on one of our projects just because they couldn't get the labor and they couldn't get the concrete material. So we went with a larger, albeit more expensive subcontractor who could get the material supply that we needed. So all in all, there are definitely challenges out there for us. We are very cognizant of schedule. We've baked in some fluff in our schedules, and we have built in, probably about a month of extra. Are you guys hearing me okay? Am I cutting in and out?
A little bit. You're good then.
All right, you're not missing anything. So we have built in some extra time in our schedules just to account for these longer lead times. We are planning to start lease up on both projects next summer and during prime leasing season. And we fully expect to spend our contingency just on these material supply chain pricing increases and commodity increases as well.
So I live out west in Elkhorn, and if you drive up and down 204th Street, you can see a ton of development. And I keep hearing from people that Elkhorn and Omaha and some of the surrounding areas are overdeveloped. Bob, can you give your thoughts on what we call the perceived overdevelopment in the multifamily market?
So this is a softball. I went on a rant about this about 3 days ago, and Josh says, why don't I just ask that question and you can talk to everybody about it. I think Aaron noted this, in the first panel, that there is, on a market by market basis, I think maybe the need for additional housing is different than it is in other markets. I think if you sit down and just look at a national level, I think there's somewhere around a $4 million or 4 million home shortage across the country, and including all facets of housing, so single family housing, for own housing as well as for rent housing. And that was occurring pre-COVID. It's just that all of these things that Cassie talked about have exacerbated that problem and probably accelerated at some point. I don't know that any of us really had a great sense of like what a year and a half or so of, essentially shutting down a lot of markets would have on supply chain and on timing to build and on all of that kind of stuff. And so all of that's come together at much the same time that people are thinking very differently about how they live and where they work at and how that happens. And so all of us have heard stories about, people that are leaving more dense places to go to less dense places. Last night's discussion at dinner was largely about people that were leaving communities that were more urban and moving to mountain communities or vacation communities or things like that to live at. When there's choices so our housing has largely been tethered to where we work, and if that's changing, then that's going to change how and where people live, both on a for own basis as well as on a for rent basis. And I think that's a very market by market thing. And I think you've got to really study population trends and housing trends, demographic trends around, what millennials are doing from a housing perspective. So millennials, several years ago, we'd have thought of as probably being a more urban downtown living group. They're now wanting to move more to the suburbs. Sometimes that's going to be a single family home. Sometimes it's going to be a rental. Lots of people my age or older are staying in their home maybe a little bit longer for lack of other places to go. We're not quite ready yet to go to the 55 and over community that houses mostly people that are 85 and over. And so there's not lots of choices for that group, and so that's getting figured out. And so to answer Josh's question directly, when you look at 204th and you look at 370, there's lots of development in that space, and there needs to be, because there's tons of development that's in that area. Lots of people want to live there, and there's lots of demand for housing that's in that space. What is being built are houses that are probably going to sell for north of $400,000. Probably most of them will be in the $500,000 range, and lots of 3-story walk-up apartments. We need all of those because there's people to live in all of those different choices. Where it's appropriate, we will build 3-story walk-up apartments, but what we feel most inclined with at the moment is this apartmentium idea that we've built at Revella 192. It's at the corner of 192nd and Pacific in Omaha. It's a deal that we partnered with Ron's involved in. Dennis Blackman was a big part of that deal, and a bunch of us in the room were involved in that. But that deal really spoke to that client that was, or that prospective renter that could choose to rent where they wanted to rent at. Maybe a little bit could pay more, but maybe wasn't exactly sure about how they felt about home ownership or how long they wanted to stay in the community in which we were at. And so we're really compelled with that idea. But there's going to be development. We need it nationally. We need it. It employs a lot of people. There's lots of demand. I think you're going to see that in lots of communities on a basis of sorting each community. We're definitely interested in markets other than just Omaha, and so But each of these cities, as you see it on 370, you see it on 204th, you see it in other areas of the city, thank goodness it's being built, because as a city, we need that to happen.
So Bob, you mentioned the term apartminium, and we're going to dive into that a little bit. And for those of you who can be there with me linguistically, it's a combination of apartment and condominium. Most of you probably already figured that out. But so we've had some success with this apartminium concept. We kind of want to hear about the what and the why. Why, what is this apartminium concept? What does it really mean? And then why did we feel like it was a great opportunity for us to go down this road?
So it's a 2-story townhome with single point of entry, attached garage, larger apartment home. So as for reference, your 3-story on average, you're going to see apartment sizes 750 square feet to 850 square feet. These apartminiums are closer to 1,200 square feet on average, so much larger. As we talk about that work from home constituency, this gives them more room to expand as they live and work in the same place. Our amenity sets are robust and luxurious with pools, clubhouse, leasing office, pet amenities, really nice landscape, really nice exteriors that look almost like a single family home. The other thing that we're focusing on is smart home technology. So Aaron talked a lot about the smart home. We're putting in, the smart T-stats, the smart door locks, making sure that they have fitness on demand where they can work out from their apartment or go to the gym, whatever suits them. So those are a few things in just the programming of these 2-story townhomes that we're looking at. High-end luxury finishes, as Bob talked about, the flight to quality, making sure that these are a quality home for our constituents. Bob, you talk a little bit about who's living in these.
So the background, I'll do this briefly, but so I said earlier, my wife had this nutty idea a year or so ago that she wanted to live on a lake. There was a few, which we dispelled pretty quickly. But a few years ago, we had a discussion between us, but also with our parents, about where would you live if you weren't going to own your house. Like if you were going to sell your house, where would you live? What location would you want to live in? What would you want to rent? But if I was to rent, what would I rent, and where would we rent at? What would I rent? What would she rent? And so we were having this discussion at roughly the same time that we found the location at 192nd and Pacific. And so Cindy went around. So I set 2 conditions. I set one big condition was you can't go look for a place to rent that Metonic has anything to do with, because I thought that would be a bad experience for everybody, right? Like nobody wants me as a renter. Nobody wants that. Trust me. And so she looked at other properties, lots of really nice properties, lots of other things. And she came back for about 2 hours after spending several days looking at properties, really nice properties. I don't mean to downgrade any of that, but literally didn't come back with anything that she would rent. And I thought, well, that's an interesting thing, because that's clearly, I think and so as we talked with our parents about this exact concept, when you're done living in your single family home and you're not quite ready yet to go to the nursing home, where do you go? And there's literally no product. When I talk to people that are roughly my age, it became apparent to me that was a market demand and that was the right location to put that at. And so what we endeavored to create was a rental experience that felt very much like a condominium ownership experience without the down payment. And so when we were looking at the finishes on the property, when we were looking at the outside design and the colors and the amenities and the pool space and the outdoor fire pit space and all those kind of things, we thought about, if you're our age, how do you do that? If you're thinking about how do you bill for, one of the things my wife came back with that slapped me around a bit was that we were going to have to pay extra for our cat. Worked perfectly logically that we pay extra for our pets when we go into 3-story walk-ups and other apartment communities, but she was appalled by that. We haven't rented in 30 years. She didn't know if that was something that we did. We bill back water, sewer, trash, but it's not the direct bill, it's just an estimated amount. She thought that seemed pretty weird, and she's perfectly happy to just write one check and pay for all of that stuff, right? Technology the same way, all of those things. And so we rolled all of that up into a single payment and provide a really concierge provided quality service there. And as we talked to folks about that concept, it made perfect sense to everybody. Everybody, like, yeah, I mean, if that was there, and I think if everybody in the room went and visited Ravello 192, I think you'd probably conclude that it's a place that you'd want to rent. Our rent is high. It's probably the highest in Omaha, partially because we're rolling up a bunch of stuff into our rent, but because it's a high-end quality, and we do a really good job of operating it and managing it, and the demand for it has been off the charts. I was at the property the other day with an investor doing a tour. There was one apartment that had been vacant for a few days we were able to get into, but it's been 100% occupied, rent going up every single time, and there's a few reasons for that. And I'll do this quick, Cassie, so I'll turn it back over to you. But so roughly 20% of the people that rent there are the empty nester group. So it's the 55, 60-year-old person that's living there that is living there as a lifestyle choice. They maybe don't want to be in Omaha all year round. They're in Omaha a lot. They want to be close to their grandkids, whatever it is. They're in that space, and they go to Florida in the wintertime. They're in that area. Young, high-income earners are in that market as well. And so a lot of these are folks that are so about 60% of the population is that group. So a group that, they maybe work at the hospital, they work someplace in that area, they're in that millennial age range, maybe can't yet afford to buy a house in Elkhorn, maybe want to buy a house in Elkhorn, but maybe not staying in Omaha. They're not exactly sure where they want to be, so they can pay the amount of rent that we're charging in that community, and so they are there. Lots of people who are working from home, and so that larger townhouse design style fits really nice for people who are working from home. Private garage, private entry, all of those kind of things. Lots of people that are there that are doing that. A lot of folks, honestly, right now that are between houses, and so. My niece example I gave this morning, she quickly sold her house much faster than she thought she was going to sell her house before she's found something else. That's happening a lot, where there's somebody that needs a spot there for a little bit, and Ravello's filling that space right now quite a bit. The person that wants a lot of mobility, definitely a lot there, and so new families wanting to be in top school districts, that's who's there. So so what we found is that it's not. People who are in their 55 to 65, 70 age group, they're okay being around kids. They don't necessarily want them above them, don't necessarily want them below them. If you're in a 3-story walk-up environment, you don't necessarily want that. But you're okay being in that environment. We're not necessarily certain that we all want to be with people that are just our own age. We're fine being in that setting, but we want to have the product type that makes sense. And Ravello, I'm sorry, I'm speechifying here a little bit, too much coffee this morning. That speaks to that clientele easily.
So, the market product itself has done really well in Omaha, and we've developed mostly in and around Omaha, some of the suburbs around Omaha. That's been our development. We've acquired properties up and down. We already talked about this, from South Dakota to Texas, but we believe that this might be successful in other markets. Can you talk about some of the other markets that we're looking at and why it could be successful there?
So, we are obviously very compelled, very excited about the Apartminium. We are actively looking in the Omaha Metro. So we currently have 3 sites that are under contract, 1 in Papillion, 1 in Gretna, and 1 in Elkhorn. They're all about 15 to 17 acres, and we're looking to put 120 to 190 Apartminiums on each of these sites. Each of them have a little bit of a distinct difference in renter profile, but we think they're all going to be similar to what we're seeing at Ravello 192. Great school districts, the single family home market really hot, obviously, in Gretna and Elkhorn. So we're going to infill or backstop with these Apartminiums that people can come live in while they're maybe looking for their first single family home in these areas, or just want to choose renting as a lifestyle choice. So all those things that Bob said. I just want to talk a little bit about a couple of the developments that we would, just like to offer up to this group. We're really excited about our Gretna 17-acre parcel at 168th and 370. This project is being branded Allura 168. And we are going to put 190 apartminiums on this site with 2 commercial pad sites that will activate the commercial that's across the street as well. Full amenity set, like I was talking about, with clubhouse, pool, walking distance to Chaco Hills, Tiburon Golf Course right next door. Pebblebrook single-family home community is just to the south of this community. And this parcel was just recently annexed into the city of Gretna. It's always been in the city of Gretna School District, but it was just annexed into the city of Gretna. So we are really excited about this opportunity. We will likely start construction in the middle of the summer next year. So we'll be working through the capital raise and entitlements with the city of Gretna. And then another one, which is really special to me, is Capriana Homes, which is 15 acres located in Old Town, Elkhorn. So this particular project, we are going to put about 160 apartminiums. Again, our peers are not doing the all-inclusive pricing. There's a lot more 3-story walk-ups. Elkhorn has been, lots of development over the past few years, but a lot of it has been the 3-story walk-up type apartment. So not a lot of townhomes in the Elkhorn area. But this particular site, we are partnering with Habitat for Humanity, and we are going to put 9 single-family home lots on this site with the apartminiums. And Habitat is going to purchase these sites and build these homes for a lower-income single-family home renter. We think that this is really cool because you will have maybe a higher earner, higher income renter with a lower income single-family homeowner who maybe would not have had the opportunity to send their kids to the Elkhorn School District, #1 in the state. So we're really excited about this partnership. We're really excited about the apartminiums that are going to go there. Again, luxury. And so those are just 2 of our pipelines that we are currently working through entitlements on.
Bob, do you have anything more to add before we dive into our Q&A session?
The only thing I would add to the Capriana project that we are super proud of is that the single-family homes that Habitat for Humanity are going to help us build are $200,000 houses. So the people that will live in those homes are probably nurses, probably people who work at the hospital, maybe firemen, policemen, people who live in that community or who want to live in that community that presently can't. Because they're just priced out of that. And I do think that, one of the challenges that communities across the country are going to struggle with is affordability. I think as an industry, we're far better off if we start dealing with the affordability question before we're mandated to do it. I'm really proud of Cassie for putting together the partnership with Habitat. The Omaha chapter of Habitat for Humanity is one of the top ones in the country. And I think this will be an incubator project that will be a model for projects across the country as we go forward, and so we're super excited about that. Just the last thing I would say before we turn it over to the Q&A is I hope that what you guys have gotten today, men and women have gotten today, is that Metonic is we're super results focused in what we're doing, and we're really innovative in what we do. I think Ron said it well earlier. Adam is probably the top 1031 expert for sure in this part of the country. There's a lot of folks that are in the room here that he has helped do really creative things around 1031 exchanges that have created a really tax efficient structure for a whole bunch of folks. So really good on that front. Our asset management team does a terrific job of being innovative in terms of the kind of things that our consumers are looking for and how they want to live and work, and they do a really terrific job with all of those things. And so, and Cassie with, the development idea we've got, how we've molded and created and worked with our partners on the apartminium idea is something that, I think as Cassie said, our peers are not doing. And so to the extent that folks are worried about, total number of units or homes that are being created, folks are not building townhouses. They're building some townhouses. I'm not going to say nobody's doing that, but not nearly to the scale that they're building 3-story walk-ups and other projects like that. And so, what we really try to do is look at where there's consumer need that's not being met. And I think we've done a really good job of that, in the markets in which we're at. I'm super proud of the results that that's brought for folks. I think, everybody said it well in this last panel that the returns that we've generated have been really, really strong. I think I saw a stat that Zach's team put together the other day that indicated that our returns over the last several years were 20% more than what we projected them to be. We do take a really careful eye to, as we're doing these things, to be conservative on the front end and over-deliver. We know that it doesn't take too many bad deals to not have very many people show up in the room. And so, we're very, very careful about that. But I think now is a time that if you're, as you're thinking about investments in real estate, to be with teams that are really being innovative in how they're approaching it and where they're looking from a market perspective, what kind of projects they're looking to buy, what kind of projects they're looking to build, because now is a real time of innovation and disruption in our industry all the way around.